episode of Juanito Learns. So in this one, what we're gonna do is that we're going to try this new, not new, this framework called React Admin. React Admin is a way to get forms, you could say that forms over data website, also known as an admin console website that will allow you to do, mostly your typical CRUD, your typical create, read, and update and delete records and data. Very typical of many line of business applications. Um, React Admin is based on React, and it also one of the other things it has is that it's something called the connectors, the providers. And let's see if we go to the documentation, there is a section. There you go, data providers. Data providers there are many data providers, and you got a bunch of them here. One of the providers is for something called Prisma, or not. Yeah, there you go, Prisma. Now, Prisma is you know, Prisma. If we go here, Prisma is basically, you could say it's an ORM. It's it's a very handy to be able to generate a model or an API over a database. If we click on here on we go to Prisma IO, and then we go to the documentation, the quick start. This is what we're gonna try to do today. But the difference we're gonna do here is that we're gonna start with an existing database. And because we are not going to define our database through Prisma, through Prisma model, we're gonna let Prisma read an existing database. Okay, so we're gonna go. The first thing to do is obviously we're gonna try to create SQL Server database. Now the SQL Server database that we're gonna create is we're gonna use Visual Studio 2019 to create a database project, and then we're gonna define the database there. So we have that database structure defined in a Visual Studio project, and then we are going to publish it to our local SQL Express instance. So first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna copy this folder that I created beforehand. I'm gonna create a new project. And this new project is to create a SQL Server project. So I'm gonna go here to all platforms and query language. And here you have your SQL Server database projects, which again is very handy for deployments. It allows you to declare your database, and it allows you to deploy those changes to the database very easily. It's extremely convenient. And I'm going to call it my students database. And then we're going to click on create. Move this one over here. And then as you've seen, it's creating the project. It looks like it's almost done finished. Oh, it's finished. So at the beginning, it's going to show this. There's an option to import an existing database. We're not going to, well, let's actually do that. Just so I can show you that, because let's say you are using a database and you're going to build on top of that. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to select my connection, which is my local SQL connection. In this case, it's .SQL Express. And the database name is going to be sample DB. And there's some options here. I'm going to tell it that we don't want to import the permissions. We don't want to import the reference logins. And everything else, XML type should be fine. Now click on start. And what's going to do is that it's going to import the current definition of the database. It's just going to transform it into the files that it needs inside Visual Studio. Okay, so I finished. So notice that I had already sort procedure. And I also had a table called students. So we're going to add some more tables to this database. Let me pin this section here. And we're going to add another table here. We're going to call it classrooms. Okay, let's call it something very simple. Let's see. I want to say classes. Let's well, maybe I'm going to call it classes and students. Then we're gonna here classes and then call this class ID as our primary ID, and I'm just gonna set it as an identity, just like we did with the other ones. Oops, there you go. No. We're gonna put that name. I copy this. I think this should be fine. And then we're gonna create, oopsies, another table that relates that classes table with the students, because a relationship between a student and a class. Students. And classes. Okay. And for this one, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to tell it that I want class ID and I want student ID. Now I don't like this student ID. Do not like the fact that that column is named just IDA. I should like naming it the right thing, student ID. And actually, let me show you something here. I can refactor and rename, and I can do student. And then, okay, it's gonna change in all these places. So there you go. We got even in the start procedure, it changed it. Well, actually, the start procedure wasn't using it, so it didn't matter. And in here in the classes, what we're gonna do is, oops, in the student classes, we're gonna set both of them as the primary key because they're both the combination of both represents a unique combination. So that's a natural key. And we definitely don't want identity. Identity, remember, is to auto-generate IDs. We don't need that. Save this, and then we're just gonna publish. Oh, but before I do, there is nothing right now forcing a relationship between these two fields and the corresponding table. So let's do that. I'm gonna go to foreign keys. A foreign key is something, it's a key that points to another table. So I'm gonna do students. And so the student ID refers to the student ID in the students table. And then I'm gonna copy that because I want one for classes. And this time it's a class ID. Notice I give me a squiggle because one nice thing about the Visual Studio SQL project is that it's gonna give you errors that about SQL. So if your SQL is malformed, or it doesn't make, or it's violating something, then it will tell you at compilation time. So again, right now that the schema has been defined only in this inside this Visual Studio project. It's nowhere else. It's not on the server yet. In order to put it in the server, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to let me size this guy high. I'm gonna fix my screen here a little bit. If it lets me. There we go. That way it gets a little bigger. So I'm going to add this to the, publish it to the SQL Server in my local machine. So I did right click on the project and then click on publish. And then I'm gonna tell it to what server. It's gonna be under my local server. I'm gonna call it sample DB. I'm gonna push it back to sample DB. So we're gonna click on save profile because I wanna save it for later. So I can just have this information already saved and publish. And right here is showing that it's publishing now. Okay, so it looks like it is done. And we're going to, well, before I do anything else, let me try to change a little bit my display. So you can see it better. Hopefully that looks bigger. Let me try. Okay, sorry, but I was trying to fix my screen. So as you're gonna see, my sample DB now has those tables right there. Okay. One thing we need to do is, now that we have our schema on the database, we're gonna follow the tutorial for Prisma. So the first thing it tells us to do is we gotta set up, we gotta do a quick start first, I think. So I'm gonna do quick start. And we definitely don't want the quick, so we just wanna add to existing project. Okay, so we need an existing Node.js project, and I have that right now. Right here, I added that using npm init. So I have that. I don't have Postgres, and we're gonna be using SQL Server. And I'm gonna do this step because the connection URL, we're gonna need that later on. And then the first thing we're gonna do is install Prisma, just like a regular npm. So let's see. Okay, so I name my folder Prisma, and I shouldn't have done that. So I'm gonna have to init this again. This time I'm gonna call it Prisma tutorial. Why not? Type. Now I'm gonna try that again. Okay, so it's downloading Prisma, and it was done. Downloading Prisma. So we're gonna go to the next step. npx Prisma. We're gonna create that Prisma schema file template. Okay, so let's see what that's do. Okay, and it did that. So now we're gonna have to do our next step. And the next step is this command create a new directory called Prisma, which contains a file name schema, Prisma, and env file in the root of project. Let's check that out. So what I do is I'm gonna right click on the empty space, and then I click on open with code. Visual Studio Code is it's what I usually use when dealing with JavaScript. And I'm going to of this one here. Yeah, it actually tells us that there are some recommendations. Oh, this is for Docker. Never mind. So we're gonna check the files that were generated. Sure enough, we got an env file here. And we got a Prisma, schema Prisma here. Oh, there's a recommendation here. Such a marketplace. It says Prisma. So I'm going to install that. It's going to give us some syntax highlighting, I believe. Okay, that's good. Let's see what the next step is. Schema Prisma contains the Prisma schema with your database connection and the Prisma client generator. Next, see, connect to a database. You need to set the URL field in the data source block to the connection URL. And they give us an example here. So I'm going to go to my env, change this. It's localhost, but it's not 1433. One way to knowing the local port of the SQL Server is to make a new query and then select from sys connections, dmexec connections. I'm gonna execute that, and I'm gonna look for, there should be a column here for the port. And I don't see it. Must be because I'm connected not through, yeah, I'm not connected via TCP. Interesting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna do this. I'm just gonna do that. SQL Express. We'll see if that is enough. There's no user. We're gonna use integrated authentication, which I never remember. I never remember what's the right parameter for that. Application, DTVC, URL. Oh, there you go. Actually, that works really well. SQL Express. Okay, so once we have that, we're going to do the introspection. I do npx Prisma pool. And I got an error. Ah, interesting. It's not pulling the right thing. My provider. I forgot to change something. Connect to your database. I have to use PostgreSQL. I have to use SQL Server. That's the problem. I'm gonna go back here and save that. Introspective for models. As we can see here, it actually added this one that we didn't need that one. That one is automatically created by SQL Server. The SQL Server Visual Studio project, but it's actually not part of our domain. You got the classes, your students, and your student classes. Alrighty, let's see what's the next step in the tutorial. We did that. And I'm gonna read that for now. I'm gonna skip that, which is probably a bad idea. Right, that looks more like trying to override some of the defaults that were created. To the Prisma client now. Prisma client, Prisma client. So I'm gonna copy that. And it looks like it's, yep, there you go. Oh, I got an error. Let's see what the error is. No such file directory. Not being able to find a file. Let's see. And that could be because of this point here. Notice that the Prisma client non-module references a folder name. That Prisma client. Prisma dash client folder contains your general Prisma client. And it's modified each time. Yeah, but it didn't. Interesting. I was just trying to install it. So why it didn't like that? There is no such file. Nodule, modules, Prisma is there. And client should be there. But it's not there. Maybe I need to do it manually. Let's try doing manually. Maybe that's what it needs. So I just right click on it and I'm going to do reveal in File Explorer. It's going to open a window and I'm going to add folder called client. Let's see what happens this time. It looks like that did the trick, maybe. Warning. There were no warnings. No, never mind. There's no warnings. All right, so now it said to us that you can now start using the Prisma client in your code. Well, let's see what the tutorial says. Let's see if this folder exists, that Prisma client. And I don't think out there. That Prisma. There you go, that Prisma and the client. That's our folder with our client. Okay, so looks like it uses it for something internally. So I'm gonna jump to query in the database. But your first query with a Prisma client. Again, we're still in the Prisma. We haven't even touched React Admin yet. So to make sure that Prisma works. And we can start writing queries. If you're building a REST API, which I think is what we want, you can use Prisma Client in your route handlers to read and write data in your database based on incoming HTTP requests. So like a server accepting requests and then serving the data from the database. But for now, we just took a plain Node.js script. Just want to create an indexed tx. That's going to be here. New file, index.tx. And then we're going to copy this. Just telling us, that we're just importing, setting it to an async function here that gets called here. Let's say it doesn't like it, which is fine. Prisma students. All students. Oops. Which in our case, it should be nobody. We probably need to add some just in case. Juanito. Smith. Age 28. So at least we have one row there. Let's add another one. Pedrito Smith. Age 24. Okay, and then let's see what happens. npx ts node. I'm gonna copy that. Let's see what happens. Let me clear the screen with CLS. Paste that. Let's see what happens. Cannot find module TypeScript. Maybe we have not installed TypeScript. It's very possible. PSC. Maybe I do not have TypeScript. How do I install TypeScript? TypeScript in your project. Oh, okay. So we just have to copy this and paste it. So we're just waiting for the TypeScript npm node to install. It looks like it gave us an error. No repository field. Oh, that's a warning. Never mind. Looks like Node is not liking this at all. That is interesting. I wonder if it has something to do how long the path is. What I'm gonna do is this. I'm going to copy that into another folder. Let me close this one here. I'm gonna close my Visual Studio too because we're gonna be moving all those projects, all that folder. Okay, so I moved the folder. Let me run the terminal. Let me try again. There you go. That worked. So we were going to, for that, we were going to do npx ts node index because we're going to execute that index. We were going to execute that index file here. So we'll see what happens now. It's going to read all the students. Ah, console. Cannot find name console. And I have no idea what that is. Cannot find name console. Do you need to change your target library? Try changing the lib compiler option to include DOM. This is a TypeScript error. Gonna find console, so we're just gonna search it. TypeScript. It's a very old one. Or tsconfig file. Let's try again. There we go. Our two students. So we're able to query the database using the auto-generate client that Prisma generated for us. Let's see. Our next step in the tutorial is right into the database. There is a nested write. Obviously, we have to change it according to our code. So do this, and instead of all users, all students, gonna be students include classes. Wait, what? Student classes. And that's it, I believe. Notice a TypeScript has a very nice typing system. Actually, it should be the other way. should be saying students in class because I want a student. But that's a number, students. And my student, I want that student to be that's first name. Oh, interestingly, what students create nested? Create. First name. Actually, I don't want anyone to connect. Maybe all I have to do is do student ID. I know that my student ID that I want is number 1 because that was my student ID here. And but I do want to create a class. So I'm gonna do classes. Create. Take a second, I want to create a new class. Name of the class. Biology. And it's not liking it because student classes input should be classes and students. Okay. Data. Let's see if that works. Then let's format this. A little bit. So I'm gonna try them to create that record and I should have it. Should have a new student in a class. I should have a Juanito in a class, so we'll see. So I just saved it and I'm gonna run it. Okay, so now I have Juanito and he's actually in a class. There you go. Now it doesn't show the class, but if I go to the my database, it shows my newly created class. Alrighty. We're gonna skip the update. What are our next steps? Next steps. Continue exploring the Prisma API client. Well, I'm good with that. Explore the data in Prisma Studio. Change the database schema. Add more tables. I can reinspect. So we can actually add the database and then call again the introspection, and it should generate. It should generate that. As a matter of fact, we can do that. I'm gonna launch Visual Studio. And then with that one, we're gonna end this session. Need to open the project. So I'm at SQL project here, and then I'm going to add another table with some relationships. So I'm going to add a new table. I'm going to call it grades. Actually, assignments. Actually, no. Grades. So hard to, in a full student system, you got a lot of tables. Just gonna call it assignment grade, assignment score. I'm gonna keep it very simple. Student ID. Actually, almost the same as this. So I'm just gonna copy this. Assignment ID. All three of these are the primary key. Oh, and I need to change my foreign key names. Now, it'll be handy if my students in class had a key here that represents this unique combination, then I just assign that here. But I'm gonna leave it like that. Assignment score. Oh, and obviously the score. And that's gonna be a numeric. Let's see. How many digits? 5, with 2 of them being a percentage. With 2 of them being decimal points. Publish that. More than one primary key. Yep. I publish and load my publish target that I had before and publish. And now I'm gonna go here and then my assignments. I'm gonna just edit manually. I'm gonna say that for assignment 1, Juanito in the class 1 had a score of 78.89. Then I'm going to do what the tutorial says to regenerate it with the pool, Prisma DB pool. So I can do that. npx Prisma DB pool is going to try to pull that with my new changes. And then I'm going to do Prisma generate. To generate my client classes. Alrighty. So now I can go back here and notice that I can also include my assignment scores. Well, it's not showing. And I wonder why. assignment score. Oh, interesting. My table name was, oh, my table is actually assignment score. Let's see, that's bad naming on my part. I'm gonna run that again. Oh, and I forgot to remove this, so it's gonna create another class called biology. And here we have assignment score, because we got the duplicate class because we created a new one. And we have assignment ID. For assignment score, we got assignment, correct? We got the score, it's a decimal. Wow, that's a representation of a decimal in JavaScript. But there you have 78, 89. So we're gonna see what's this. Based on examples, repository contains a number of ready to run examples. REST Next.js. Interesting. Graph Next.js. GraphQL, REST Express, backend only. Okay. In the next video, we're gonna try to connect it to React Admin. But for the time, we're gonna take a break. Thank you.